Good morning. My name is Naomi Nautarama, and I work for LCA Communications team. And today we're going to talk about regenerative grazing. And I'm here with Thabang. Thabang, would you tell us more about yourself, please? What you do?
Hi, Naomi.
Hi.
Thanks for the opportunity, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. So as you've said, my name is Thabang, and Thabang is a young man who grew up in the Limpopo province of South Africa. Very deep in the rural areas, grew up actually herding cattle, donkeys, sheep, goats, livestock, living with my family there. And I always had a thing for education and studies because we were taught that that's the only way out, out of the previously disadvantaged background that we're in. And I soldiered on. I said, I'm just going to focus on that. And I think I grew up a very disciplined child and always wanted to stay out of trouble. And I did my undergraduate studies at University of Limpopo, where I majored in zoology and biochemistry. And I fell in love with zoology because at the end of, I'm sure I don't know how is it in Rwanda with the education systems, but at the end of the third year of your undergraduate studies, you have to sort of select in which way you want to lean towards.
Oh, we have that.
Yeah. So biochemistry for me was very difficult, and I was like, I grew up looking after cattle and stuff. This closest thing to me was then zoology. And I decided to go through the path of zoology. And I think to develop my passion for zoology and wildlife and conservation, I actually started volunteering with organizations like your Endangered Wildlife Trust. And obviously with the courage and guidance, I always took into consideration the people around me who are in a very different space and who I consider them as leaders. My then supervisor, Dr. Ali Halajan, I still remember his name. He sort of always encouraged me, take the initiative. If you want to know about something, be where people are doing that so that you'll be able to know and not just read about it in the books. And that's where I decided to go volunteer with EWT for a while during holidays under my undergraduate studies. Then I sort of developed the passion for wildlife and conservation because were doing really incredible, cool stuff in the space. And I then decided, okay, this is what I'm going to do going forward. And after the final year of my BSc, I then enrolled for honors in zoology at the University of Limpopo. Then later on, I got an opportunity to go study wildlife management in Hungary. Yeah, like people will ask me, why would you go study wildlife management in Europe?
I'll ask you the same too.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. And for me, it was always about the principles and the technical things that one would learn and bring back into the space. Because when you talk about population dynamics, it's the same thing. When you talk about spatial data interpretation, GIS, remote sensing, the analogy is the same, It doesn't really matter what the case studies are. But that was important for me to say, go and learn and also just get out of South Africa for a while and go, And I got an opportunity of which I think it's a really incredible opportunity that the Department of Higher Education and Training of South Africa under the International Scholarships banner is actually promoting that people go and study abroad and gives these opportunities. And I was actually the only person in 2017 who, under that scholarship, who was studying wildlife management, because they actually have to choose 100 students, and 60 of which is masters and 10 PhD and 30 bachelors. And I was the only student actually going to study wildlife. And I was so scared. I'm like, why am I the only person? Why? And but as I just went on and I understood that obviously they're looking for critical skills that are important for the country. And I went to study my master's there. And lucky enough, while I was studying my master's, I still soldiered on in terms of volunteering and wanting to be involved in the space of applied learning and wanting to see the things that we learn in class, how can we apply them. So I continued to volunteer. And I remember I found myself on this one job that was in Saudi Arabia, learning about baboons.
After Hungary.
Yeah, in between the studies in Hungary. So it was really cool for me. I was like, this is so cool. And as I'm the only, I'm sort of one person doing that at the moment in the space of that international scholarships fraternity. And it gave me oomph, and strength to say, just do this because you are now very unique. And after the master's, after completing the master's, I got an opportunity to still do the PhD under the same discipline, under the same university. And I just fell in love with it, and upon finishing my PhD, I got to be employed by the International Council for Game and Wildlife Conservation in Hungary as well. And obviously, if the scholarship is provided by government, it is obligated that you come back home to come back and study in South Africa and work in South Africa, sorry. And then I got an opportunity to work for the Southern African Wildlife College. And at the Southern African Wildlife College, I actually look after I lead the nature-based economy and the community-led conservation practices team. And over and above that, I'm still associated with few other organizations in the space. So one thing about me, I don't believe in burning bridges. I will continue making sure that this relationship stays, even if I'm no longer with you. So I'm still involved with the CIC, and I'm also involved with the African Wildlife Economy Institute as well, because I'm also a fellow there. But I think in a nutshell, and I think I've shared too much, that's who I am.
That's a big biography though. Yeah, you've done a lot of work.
Yeah.
All right. So, Thabang, Dr. Thabang. The last time we gave a talk on Zoom, on Share Screen Africa platform, you mentioned Herding Academy. What is it all about, and how do you contribute through Herding Academy in conservation? Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so the Southern African Wildlife College, obviously as a center of specialization in capacity building for SADC, has various units or departments within it. And one of the units that actually I manage, and it is under my thematic area, is actually the Herding Academy that you're talking about. And it is, for a long time, cattle have been seen as a problem when it comes to nature and conservation.
Sure.
And we're trying with the Herding Academy and our stakeholders in the space to showcase that these systems can still work together from a livestock front and from a conservation front. And actually, livestock and regenerative grazing and rangelands management can actually help conservation while also improving people's livelihoods. But at the end of the day, it is about livelihoods. And herding and grazing and strategic grazing of cattle is the center of making that a success for the whole regenerative grazing to contribute to conservation. So at the Herding Academy, as the Wildlife College, we actually train and provide capacity to communities to make sure that they implement the regenerative grazing concept in a way that it improves their livelihoods, but has conservation as a positive consequence to it, that people need to manage their cattle properly and in such a way that we do not cause overgrazing, or in essence, we do not cause deserts into community landscapes.
Oh, and in which communities are you working currently?
So, as I've mentioned at the college, we work in the region, in the SADC countries, and obviously we do not implement the regenerative grazing concept per se, but we support in terms of capacity building to our stakeholders that we work with, for example, Conservation International and Peace Parks Foundation have what they call the Heading for Health concept, of which is around that regenerative heading and grazing concept.
Yeah.
And what we do is that we provide training for people to be able to understand this better, and be able to, the people who are heading, to be able to have the capacity to say, why are we doing this? The farmers, the headers, and the community leadership structures as well.
Okay. So talking about the regenerative grazing, it sounds like it's a big thing. Isn't that expensive and maybe not accessible to all the farmers that you give that capacity building?
It's not really expensive, but there's a lot of challenges around that, and I think we have learned this through our stakeholder engagement initiatives and through the network of the people that we work with, especially in the Heading for Health space.
Okay.
That obviously, when you talk about this regenerative grazing, it's more or less wanting people to combine their heads, so that we do not do or practice what would be called continuous selective grazing. So you can imagine if you have 1,000 households in a community, whereby each and every household has cattle. Can be two cattle. One household can have 2 cattle. Another one can have 10 or 20 or 50. But each day, when that farmer wakes up and the header, they will take the cattle to a place where they think there is good grass.
Sure.
In the landscape.
Yeah, sure.
And if we have to do that, if everyone has to do that, what we are doing then is basically causing desert, because it's a continuous selective grazing. We're only going to look at pasture that is palatable, that is good for the cattle, and which is going to be depleted because it's not a finite resource. So what the model or the program advocates for is for people to join hands as a community of farmers, as a community of practice of farmers in the communities, to be able to say, we care about the sustainability of our rangelands, we care about ecosystem restoration of our rangelands, and we don't want to be selfish. We want to join hands and work together towards the greater good of the ecosystem. And which means that these households need to put these kettles in one big head, whereby you have thousands of kettles that are still headed by, you remember, each and every household has 1 or 2 headers that look for the cattle, depending on the capacity or the number of kettles. So it is very important. The challenge is there, because then now you have to convince people to say, let's combine, and the challenge that most of our stakeholders have is actually at that front, the community engagement front, to say, how do I convince you that this model could work for you? This model can bring about positive outcomes to your actual environment. And people have different cultures and beliefs within the space in the communities.
Yeah.
And someone can just decide to say, I don't want to combine my kettles with Naomi's kettles, because Naomi is using Muti for her kettles.
How do you deal with that, by the way?
Exactly.
That's so interesting.
So that is something that is there, and you cannot change it.
Yeah.
But I think the most important impact is showing and is making the case for the outcome of that. Because in the case, if we go back to how that works, is actually you bring the kettles together. Now you have, instead of having small pieces of land where people graze, now you have a huge landscape that it is available for grazing of the kettles. So it means now you can now start planning. That's why now we call this strategic planned grazing. You can start planning looking into your landscape, where are the water sources, where are the river systems, and then start to demarcate your land properly to say, okay, in the next few months, the kettles are going to be in this area. And then after that, they're going to move into that area, allowing some areas to rest and not over rest, to rest, to a point where grass can regenerate in that area, and you move on like that, then this is no longer selective continuous grazing. So those are some of the challenges. But if we are able to show the positive outcomes of this, because those include, imagine now you have cattle that are feeding everywhere, and most of the cattle are not even headed. Some just let them go into the wild, and they eat anything that they come across. The plastics. We have issues of pollution. So at the end of the day, the farmer is not happy with the outcome of the cattle, with the health of the cattle, because it is not nourished enough. It has diseases. But if these cattle, imagine you have a bird eye view of all your cattle in the community. You have people who are your headers that keep record to see, oh, this cattle has this kind of symptoms. And you bring in a vet, because this now is a collective impact. You bring in a vet to say, have a look at that. How can we solve that? And things you can have a look. You can have a look at it from that kind of front. So one of the positive outcomes is as a farmer, at the end of the day, this is your resource. This is your money. You need to be able to sell it at a good price. So within the space of regenerative grazing, in the concept of combined grazing, we are able to now create some sort of market access with the communities. Remember, this is a community-led model. It is not a project. It starts as a project, but as a project implementer, and I'm sure our colleagues in the space, they understand this very well. As an implementer, you have to come to a stage whereby you are going to exit. But the exit needs to be planned. The exit needs to be at a point where you see, oh, this is now sustainable. Because if that is the case, you can now start bringing things like your mobile auctions into the space, and farmers can start selling their cattle now at a better rate. That is actually now, because the cattle is healthy, the cattle always have grass, and you can actually increase the value of the cattle. You can bring mobile auctions, you can bring, mobile abattoirs, and mobile because we still have, in the landscape, especially in the global south, we still have an issue with diseases around foot and mouth, that you're not able to just buy a cow and move it somewhere else. But sort of things need to be happening in a way that the policy guides us. And those are some of the restrictions that and the challenges that we have. So we can bring auctions, you can bring abattoirs in it, and most of these communities that we work with, they are living in the boundaries of protected areas.
Yeah.
And there is a huge market for that, because there's a lot of lodges around protected areas. There's also even communities themselves that can buy the meat without having to transport it. And in this way, we can overcome the challenges of diseases and all that. And those are some of the outputs that we need to show in order to convince the farmers to say, let's join hands and let's do. So part of the access market is those mobile auctions, mobile abattoirs, and now some stakeholders go in the stage of even going into carbon credits, because now in this landscape, the landscape is always covered with grass. There's no a place where there is bare soil and bare land. Then it means that you're actually trapping carbon. Instead of carbon going into the atmosphere and damaging our ozone layer and all those kind of things, you are trapping it and putting it here. And in this case, you can go and actually look into the business of carbon credits and all that. So this is a huge incentive for a farmer, over and above just selling a cattle. So if we can communicate that, so that's the challenge that we have. We need to communicate this in a very simple way that the farmer will understand that, oh, this is actually over and above the issues that I have in terms of tradition and culture and all that.
Wow, that's so impressive. Understanding the problem, the challenges that you're facing, and the solution that you're bringing on the table as heading the academy. So now I'm curious to know, I've heard when we started from the background, your education background, and what you're doing in this project. How did you get into this? It sounds like a very huge
Yeah, and I think that's a very relevant question to ask, because if someone is into conservation and has passion for conservation, they'll ask, what are you doing with livestock now?
Exactly, yeah.
Because that's just, it's agriculture. But I think, in my understanding, and I'm just putting a disclaimer out there, that conservation is not just about protected areas. You know, we are moving in a space where conservation is looked at a landscape level. You know, it's not about the Kruger National Park. It's not about, you know, where are we now? Maputo National Park. So it is really looking at conservation as in the form of a landscape. And if you go and visit the concept of biosphere reserves, it speaks to that. And if you go and look at now what the South African National Parks has come up with, the concept of mega living landscapes, to say we acknowledge that conservation can still happen outside of the fences, you know, in communities, you know, there's the concepts of OACMs now, other effective conservation management areas, that are not strictly your protected areas, but these are areas that can be put under conservation. And our rangelands in communities can be that these people can still get those benefits of the regenerative rangeland management and grazing through actually restoring the ecosystems where they live. Because at the end of the day, if we have grass, that is good for conservation, that is ecosystem restoration, that is, you know, the whole carbon offset that we would like to go into, that is what we are talking about. So conservation in the space of heading programs and regenerative grazing, it becomes a positive unintended consequence, because it's there. And I think it is very important to sort of start looking at it that way. That's where my interest lies, to say these can actually benefit conservation. And in the meantime, improve people's livelihoods. So we're talking now more people-centered conservation than just talking about nature.
So, Thabang, now that you've explained to me what you're doing, I had a curious question. If you had to explain a regenerative grazing or regenerative agriculture, how would you explain it to a typical farmer? What is it about? How is it done? Or
yes, I think if I were to explain what regenerative grazing heading is to someone who does not understand it, I would start by showing the consequence of what is actually happening in the space, because that's what we are trying to change. Because I'll start by explaining, you know, what you are doing is selective continuous grazing. And if you want to make an impact in terms of regenerative grazing and ecosystem restoration, you need to join hands with other people and combine your head with other people's head. So, you know, and there's many ways, and there's a huge difference between regenerative practices in agriculture per se, because it will include not using fertilizers and all those kind of things. But when it comes to regenerative plant grazing, it's actually making sure that we are trying to mimic the hoof effect of your typical herbivores in a natural environment. So imagine what we are trying to do. We are trying to, instead of tilling the ground, we put the kettles in there to actually make an impact on the soil and defecate on the soil, and sort of, instead of using fertilizers and all this, so the whole concept is around joint force and actually holding hands together as a community to make an impact. Because alone, when it comes to grazing, you will not reach the targets that you want to reach, and we need this collective impact.
Oh, so in fewer words, it means that nobody can do it alone.
Yes.
They have to collectively or join
yes.
a group
100%.
together. All right.
100%.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
I like the fact that you really engage the communities in the project, and it's for the people, it's for the communities. Yeah, thank you for explaining the whole everything about regenerative grazing, and thank you to tell us about what you're doing. Yeah, it was an honor to have you.
Thanks.